Dream of the Red Chamber Chapter 92.
Today, we're just looking at a handful of events happening almost simultaneously within the walls of this massive family compound.
And by massive, we really need to set the scale for the listener here.
Please do, because it's hard to wrap your head around.
The G family compound isn't just a big house. It is a sprawling complex of courtyards, gardens, and pavilions.
Almost like a campus.
Bigger. It's populated by hundreds of extended family members and literally thousands of servants. It functions like a small, self-contained city-state.
Wow, thousands.
Yeah. And within this city-state, over the course of just a day or two, we get 4 distinct threads.
Okay, lay them out for us.
Well, we have a young heir dodging his education. We have a brutal tragedy in the servants' quarters, a pitch from a luxury goods salesman, and a quiet, terrifying conversation about a political purge.
And my goal today is to really figure out the connective tissue here. Because on the surface, a teenager nerding out over ancient poetry, a maid fighting with her mother, and a guy trying to sell a magic pearl, they seem completely unrelated.
Oh, totally random on the surface.
Right. But the more you dig into this, the more you realize every single one of these threads is screaming the exact same warning. This text really forces you to look at how people behave when the ship is sinking, and they, completely refuse to look at the water.
It demands a constant shifting of perspective. One moment you're analyzing the philosophical ideals of the ruling class, right?
Right.
And then the very next moment you are confronted with the physical, bloody reality of the people who serve them.
It's a huge whiplash.
It is. And the underlying tragedy is the utter inability of the people in charge to read the room. I mean, they are surrounded by flashing red lights, and they just keep pouring more wine.
Let's start with the heir, then. Bai-Yu. If anyone should be paying attention to the future of the family, it's him, right?
Absolutely. He's the golden boy.
He is the young, hyper-privileged male heir. And how does he actually spend his time? The scene opens with him strolling back to his personal courtyard after hanging out with his cousin, Lin Dayu.
A very famous literary pairing, those two.
Right. And what were they doing? They were debating Zen riddles.
Which is a brilliant, just subtle piece of characterization right off the bat.
How so?
Because immediately upon returning, he gets scolded by Jiren, his senior maid. She asks what he's been up to. He mentions the Zen riddles, and she just completely shuts it down.
She is not having it.
Not at all. She tells him that if he doesn't have anything productive to do, he should just talk about normal household matters. Or, practice standard poetry. She literally asks him, "Why are you talking about Zen riddles? You aren't a monk."
I love Jiren's reaction because it's so profoundly grounded. Bai-Yu tries to defend himself, claiming he and Dayu have their own Zen logic and that outsiders just don't get it.
Oh, classic teenager.
It's that exact classic insufferable teenager thing, where you think you and your friend have invented a secret language and the adults just don't understand your, immense depth.
Yeah, you wouldn't get it, Mom.
Exactly.
Right.
But wait, we have to understand why Zen Buddhism, and specifically Zen riddles, is so subversive in this context. Why is Jiren so stressed out about it?
Well, Bai-Yu is a young man in the Qing dynasty. His entire existence is supposed to be structured around Confucian duty.
Okay, and Confucianism is all about order, right?
Exactly. Social order, hierarchy, family obligation, and most importantly, preparing for the civil service examinations to secure political power for the family.
Right, the exams are everything. You study the classics, you write the 8-legged essay, you get a government post. That is the only acceptable path for a guy like him.
Precisely. And Zen is the absolute antithesis of that.
How so?
Zen is about stripping away societal illusions. It's about rejecting rigid doctrine and seeking sudden, intuitive enlightenment. By engaging in Zen wordplay with Dayu, Bai-Yu is actively rebelling against his Confucian duties.
He's basically saying the exams don't matter.
Yeah. He's retreating into this hyper-intellectual, highly insulated world of esoteric thought.
Right.
Zirin isn't just annoyed that he's being weird.
Right.
She is genuinely terrified because he's ignoring the very real, brutal expectations placed on him as the male heir.
Because her survival is tied directly to his success, right?
Yeah.
If he fails to become a powerful official, the entire household, including the maids, goes down with him.
Yep, they are tethered to him.
So she tells him to stop confusing everyone and act his age. But Bai-Yu is just a professional at dodging responsibility. And this brings us to the core of this opening sequence. He is desperate to get out of school.
The timing is so crucial here. The next day is the winter solstice. Grandmother Jia, who is the ultimate matriarch of the family, is hosting a gathering to, quote-unquote, disperse the cold.
Right, it's a big festival day.
Yeah. And Bai-Yu has already gone to the family school and preemptively asked the tutor for a day off. but he's still really anxious about it.
Why is he anxious if the teacher said yes?
Because he is terrified that his father, Xifeng, will find out. His father represents the strict, punishing force of Confucian expectation. Bayu's worried his dad will accuse him of slacking off.
Look at the dynamic in his room when he brings this up. Jiren, playing the role of the responsible surrogate mother, tries to guilt him. She points out that another young relative in the family, Brother Lan, is up late studying.
Always the comparison to the better student.
Right. She says he's writing essays until the fourth watch of the night. Think about that pressure. The fourth watch is roughly 1:00 to 3:00 a.m.
It's an insane schedule.
That is the level of grind expected of these boys. Ziren warns Bayu that if he falls behind, he's going to face the wrath of the family.
But Jiren's voice of reason is immediately undercut by another maid, Shay.
Oh, Shay.
Yeah, Shay represents the coddling, insulated environment that allows Bayu to avoid reality. She essentially says, look, it's freezing outside. You already asked the teacher for the day off. Just stay home and let's enjoy the festival.
Shayu is the ultimate enabler. Jiren actually gets mad at her, accusing Shayu of just wanting Bayu around so she has someone to play with.
Which is probably true.
It totally is. It paints this fascinating picture of Bayu's environment. He is trapped between the crushing life or death pressure of the patriarchal exam system and this soft, comfortable, feminine inner world that constantly gives him an escape hatch.
And the escape hatch opens right on cue. A messenger arrives from grandmother Jia.
The matriarch steps in.
Yes, she officially excuses him from school so he can attend the gathering. He has successfully utilized the matriarch's indulgence to bypass the patriarch's discipline. He's thrilled.
But hold on, because this is where the irony gets so thick you can cut it with a knife. The guy who just pulled every string to get a snow day suddenly turns into an academic pedant.
Serious.
The very next day, having skipped his own classes, he runs into his young niece, Qiaoji. She's just a little girl, and she proudly tells him about her studies.
She mentions that she has learned over 3,000 words.
It's a lot, right?
In the context of classical Chinese education, recognizing 3,000 characters is a massive milestone.
Right.
It moves a student from basic literacy to the actual ability to functionally read texts.
And she tells him what she's reading. It's not light fiction. She is studying the classic of filial piety for girls and the biographies of exemplary women.
Heavy, moralistic texts.
Very. Now, instead of just giving her a high five, Bayu launches into this massive encyclopedic lecture. He asks her if she actually understands what she's reading and then proceeds to unload a barrage of historical name-dropping that is, frankly, staggering.
He categorizes women from antiquity with this obsessive curatorial detail. He starts with talented women, right? Cao Dagu, who is Ban Zhao, the first female Chinese historian.
Wow.
Yeah, and Ban Jiu, a scholar and poet. Shi Dayun, famous for her philosophical debates. Then he moves to women who were virtuous despite crushing poverty.
Like Meng Guang.
Exactly, Meng Guang, who famously wore a thorn hairpin and cloth skirt to show her devotion to her poor husband.
And he doesn't stop. He goes into tragic women. Princess Licheng, whose story involves a broken mirror and a violently torn-apart marriage. Su Hui, who wove a complex palindrome poem to win back her exiled husband.
It's just a non-stop list.
And then he gets into the truly intense stuff, the filial martyrs. He lists Mulan, who takes her father's place in war. Cao Yi, who drowned herself in a river trying to recover her father's body. He even lists women who mutilated themselves to avoid forced remarriage, like Lady Cao, who cut off her own nose.
It's intense. He creates this entire taxonomy of female suffering and virtue. He lists women who were famously ugly but brilliant in statecraft, like Wu Yan, and women who were famously beautiful but doomed, like Shi.
I have to stop and unpack this because his behavior here is fascinating but also deeply unsettling.
Oh, very unsettling.
He is listing off these women like they are trading cards. Like, I'll trade you one filial Mulan for a tragic Princess Licheng.
Yeah, it's very gamified for him.
Right. Think about yourself, the listener. Have you ever met someone who treats historical trauma as just a neat aesthetic?
Unfortunately, yes.
Bao Yu is listing women who drowned, who were mutilated, who suffered extreme poverty, and he talks about them with the enthusiasm of a kid showing off a comic book collection. Does he actually grasp the immense, crushing weight of these stories?
The short answer is no, absolutely not.
I didn't think so.
He possesses the ultimate privilege of ignorance. Bao Yu treats female suffering as a beautiful academic subject to be categorized and admired from a perfectly safe distance.
Safe being the key word.
Exactly. He can read about Lady Cao cutting off her nose and find it profoundly poetic. precisely because he will never, ever be placed in a societal position where mutilating himself is the only way to retain his autonomy.
Because he's a man.
Yes, and a rich one. His admiration is genuine. He truly believes women are purer and superior to men, but it is fundamentally disconnected from the brutal reality of what forced these historical women to take such extreme actions.
He's a voyeur of virtue. And Grandmother Gia, who is listening to this whole rant, eventually just shuts him down. He's in the middle of listing women famous for being jealous and resentful, and she just cuts him off.
She's had enough?
Yeah, she says, "That's enough. You're talking too much. How is she going to remember all that?" And then she outlines her own philosophy on women's education, which is very different from Bayou's.
Grandmother Gia's perspective is brutally pragmatic. She states that while it is acceptable for a girl to recognize a few words, the truly critical skills are female work and needlework.
But they're rich. Why do they need to sew?
Well, she argues that women in their wealthy aristocratic class don't actually need to sew their own clothes to survive. But they must understand the labor.
Why?
So that later in life, when they are managing a household, they won't be manipulated, lied to, or taken advantage of by the servants.
Let's translate that to a modern equivalent for the listener. Imagine a parent looking at their teenager who is deeply passionate about writing code and building software.
Okay.
And the parent says, "That's cute, but you need to drop the computer and learn how to change a tire, check the oil, and balance a checkbook." It is a completely defensive worldview.
That's a perfect analogy. Grandmother Gia does not view literacy as a pathway to intellectual expansion or self-actualization. For her, a woman's domain is strictly the domestic sphere, the management of the inner chambers.
Right.
Understanding needlework means understanding the physical labor of the people beneath you. If you know how the work is done, the servants cannot cheat you.
So it's all about loss prevention.
Exactly. Reading is reduced to a baseline utility, just enough to read an account book and prevent embezzlement. Her philosophy is entirely focused on survival, asset protection, and maintaining control within a rigid patriarchal structure.
So we have the stark contrast. Bayou, the male, treats education as a romantic, aesthetic playground where he can avoid real work.
Yep.
Grandmother Gia, the female patriarch, treats education as a grim, defensive toolkit. And to make Bayou's high-minded philosophical posturing even more hollow, the text gives us a glimpse into what he is actually thinking about right after delivering this lecture.
Oh, this part is so telling. The narrative notes that while little Kauji is earnestly talking about learning a few stitches from her nurse, Bayou appears completely dazed.
He's not even paying attention.
No, he is not contemplating the profound sacrifices of the tragic heroines he just listed. He is secretly obsessing over a beautiful servant girl named Vuer.
Right. He had heard a rumor that this girl, Wuer, who is described as delicate and charming, might be assigned to work in his specific courtyard, and he is just completely distracted, daydreaming about her moving into his space.
It totally undercuts his entire scholarly persona.
It really does.
It exposes the massive disconnect between the idealized ancient women he praises and the living, breathing women in his immediate vicinity.
Because the servant girls don't have that agency.
Exactly. The servant girls in his household are subject to the absolute whims of the masters. They can be bought, sold, promoted, or expelled with a single command. Bayou romanticizes the extreme agency of historical women, but he passively benefits from a system that denies that exact agency to the women around him.
He wants Wuer in his courtyard not as an intellectual equal, but as an aesthetic object to be possessed.
Right.
Which is the perfect pivot point for the text. Because while Bayou is sitting in a warm room safely intellectualizing female tragedy, an incredibly real, visceral, and bloody tragedy regarding female autonomy is exploding just outside his door in the servants' quarters.
It's a huge shift in tone.
We move from the privilege of ignorance directly into the crushing reality of the lower classes.
The focus shifts to Wang Xifeng. She is the razor-sharp, fiercely intelligent manager of the Jia household, the powerful lady of the house who is running late for a very important meeting with the family matriarch, Lady Jia.
Right, and she's delayed because she gets intercepted by a messenger.
Yeah, and this messenger operates like this sudden tether, pulling us down from the pristine, wealthy drawing rooms straight into the messy, desperate reality of the servants' quarters.
Because the messenger is there on behalf of the mother of a young girl named Siki.
Right. And to understand why this messenger is so panicked, you really have to realize that Siki has just lost absolutely everything.
Like her whole world has collapsed?
Exactly. The text gives us the backstory here. Siki was recently caught with contraband inside the grand house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, essentially the ruling family found evidence of her secret affair with her cousin. And because of this massive scandal, she was disgraced, stripped of her position, and banished back to her mother's house.
Which, if we think about this like a massive corporate machine, isn't just getting fired. Like, the aristocratic household is the only economy that matters here.
It's the only game in town.
Right. So getting dismissed for a scandal means your resume is burned, your reputation is totally destroyed, and your livelihood is gone.
Completely gone.
So Siki has been sitting at her mother's house, crying all day, facing total ruin, and then the door opens.
And it's the cousin.
Oh, boy.
The very boy whose actions led to her absolute downfall. He just walks right into her mother's house.
I can only imagine the temperature in that room. I mean, the mother is completely furious, and understandably so, right? She blames this boy for destroying her daughter's entire life.
Oh, absolutely. And she doesn't just yell, she physically attacks him.
Wait, she actually goes after him?
Yeah, she grabs him, trying to beat him, pouring out all this rage. And the cousin, he does nothing.
Nothing at all.
He just stands there. He looks completely terrified, offering zero defense and zero help.
Wow. But the commotion draws Siki out, doesn't it?
It does. And this is where the text gives us a remarkable, complicated display of defiance. Siki bursts into the room, but she doesn't come in as, weeping, lovesick victim who just wants everyone to get along.
Right. Her dialogue is incredibly sharp here.
Very sharp. She actively defends him, but she makes sure to tell her mother that she actually hates him.
Wait, she defends him while saying she hates him?
Yeah. She explicitly states she hates him for being a coward, for lacking the courage to take responsibility, and for fleeing when they were discovered.
Oh.
But then she pivots. She says, "I took a false step and fell for him, but I am his person now."
That's a profound declaration.
It really is. In a society that affords a servant girl almost no legal or social autonomy, she declares that a woman only gets one man, and she will never, under any circumstances, give herself to another.
I have to admit, when I first read this part, I was so frustrated with her.
Really? How come?
Well, why on earth is she defending a guy who literally ran away and let her take the fall? To use a modern analogy, it feels like she is taking the ultimate life-in-prison plea deal to protect an accomplice.
Right.
But the accomplice is standing right next to her in the courtroom, totally silent, just watching her go down for it. Like, why fall on your sword for someone that useless?
Yeah. Well, if we look closely at her social standing, she isn't necessarily defending his character.
Okay.
Think about it. She has been stripped of her job, her reputation, her future prospects. If she admits she was just manipulated by a cowardly boy, she loses the very last tiny shred of dignity she possesses.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, she becomes a pure victim of circumstance.
Oh, wow. So by claiming it as an absolute binding choice, even if she acknowledges it was a flawed choice, she retains her agency.
Precisely.
She is saying, I did this is my fate, and I am choosing it.
Yes, she is defending her own choice. Because if she folds, society dictates her narrative. If she stands her ground, she remains an active participant in her own life.
Right.
And she makes that terrifyingly clear with an ultimatum. She tells her mother that if he hasn't changed his mind about her, she will follow him anywhere.
Even if they have to beg.
Exactly. Even if they are reduced to begging for food on the streets, she will go.
But the mother doesn't back down. Like, she completely rejects the ultimatum, and she does it by asserting total authority.
Yeah, she does.
She tells Siki, you are my daughter, I absolutely won't give you to him.
And we really need to unpack the phrasing there. I won't give you to him.
Right, it's very transactional.
Very. The mother isn't just voicing parental disapproval here. In this specific societal structure, she has absolute legal and economic control over her daughter.
Because a dismissed servant girl has zero property and zero legal rights.
Zero. The mother literally views Siki as an asset to be controlled, traded, or withheld.
So when the mother says no, there is no appellate court. There is no running away in the middle of the night. Her mother's word is like a physical wall trapping her in that room.
That's a great way to put it.
Which makes Siki's next move incredibly bleak, but logically completely devastating. If her mother views her as a physical asset,
smashing her own head against the stone wall is a way of permanently bankrupting her mother's leverage.
yes,
That's
exactly.
a brilliant way to frame it. Siki's own life is the literal only currency she has left. By ending it, she bypasses the entire legal and familial system. She makes the ultimate undeniable choice that neither her mother nor society can overrule.
And what gets me is the text doesn't romanticize this at all. There is no soaring music, no final dramatic monologue where she gasps out her love.
No, it's incredibly blunt.
It happens in a split second. She turns, smashes her head into the wall, bleeds profusely, and dies immediately. Just like that. The suddenness of it is staggering.
And obviously it leaves the mother completely hysterical. She is screaming over her daughter's body, turning to the cousin, and demanding that he pay with his own life.
Right. And here is where the narrative gives us a massive case of whiplash. While the mother is wailing over the blood on the floor, the cousin suddenly isn't scared anymore. He calmly tells them not to panic.
Which is an insane thing to say in that moment.
Insane. And then he drops a bombshell. He says he hadn't just been running away. He had actually been out making a fortune, and he came back specifically to get Siki.
And he proves it right.
Yeah, to prove it, he reaches into his jacket and pulls out a box overflowing with gold and pearl jewelry.
And this introduces a deeply, deeply cynical twist.
It really does.
Because the moment the mother sees the gold, her entire demeanor fundamentally changes. I mean, standing inches away from her daughter's freshly dead body, she immediately softens.
It's disgusting.
She looks at the cousin and actually asks, "If you had this, why didn't you say anything?"
I couldn't believe what I was reading. Her daughter's blood is literally pooling on the floor, and the mother is suddenly in negotiation mode because shiny objects appeared.
It is incredibly dark.
It's so dark.
But that sudden greedy pivot from the mother is exactly the validation the cousin was looking for. It exposes why he stayed silent, and it reveals his deeply twisted philosophy about the world.
He actually explains his logic to the mother, and honestly, this part made my blood boil.
Oh, I'm sure. It's tough to read.
He calmly states that he believes women are inherently fickle. The text translates his phrasing to water nature, willow flowers.
Yeah, it's a very specific metaphor. It implies that a woman's affection easily drifts, blowing whichever way the wind or the current takes it.
So he just assumes the worst.
Right. He operates under this deeply ingrained paranoia that any affection directed at him is purely transactional.
So his defense is, if he had walked into the house and immediately shown the money, he would have always assumed Siki only wanted him for his wealth.
He would never have known if she actually loved him as a person.
Or if she was just following the gold.
Exactly. He needed absolute, irrefutable proof. And in his mind, the only way to get that proof was to watch how she behaved when all hope was lost.
Think about the cruelty of that. He stood there, completely silent, watching the woman he supposedly loves fight her own mother.
He watched her reputation be dragged through the mud.
Yeah, he watched her be pushed to the absolute brink of despair, all as a sociological experiment.
And the worst part is, he actually views the experiment as a success. He literally tells the mother, "Now I know she is true to the person," which is rare.
It is the ultimate tragic irony. Like, he engineered a situation of absolute despair to test her loyalty.
Right, he got the proof he wanted, but the parameters of his test were so extreme that they cornered Siki into killing herself.
We see a watered-down version of this psychological impulse all the time today.
Oh, absolutely.
You look at the internet, and it is flooded with these toxic reality TV shows or TikTok trends where people set up elaborate, deceitful traps to test their partner's loyalty.
Yeah, they hire actors to flirt with their significant other.
Or create fake accounts to try and catch them in a lie, just to soothe their own deep-seated insecurities.
The underlying paranoia is identical. It's the need to artificially manufacture a crisis just to see if your partner will abandon you.
But the stakes here are fatal. He needed validation so badly that he let a domestic dispute escalate into a suicide.
And once he has his twisted proof, once he knows for a fact she loved him and not the money, he just hands the entire box of gold and pearls over to the mother.
Having paid off the mother, who is now totally distracted by the sudden wealth, he announces his next move. He states he is going out to buy a coffin to bury Siki.
And the mother, clutching a box of pearls, just lets him walk right out the door.
Which sets up the incredibly chilling second half of this tragedy. He goes out on his errand, but when he comes back, the mother is confused because he doesn't bring back one coffin.
He brings back two.
The mother asks him why he needs two, and he just smiles at her and says, "One isn't enough, we need two."
And the physical actions described in the text here are deliberately slow and meticulous.
Terrifyingly meticulous. I mean, he doesn't cry. There is no wailing. He gently cleans Siki's body. He prepares her for burial.
Right.
And then, when the mother is looking away, he calmly takes out a small knife, slits his own throat, and dies right there next to her.
It's so striking. Think about how we are conditioned to process trauma and grief.
Right. Usually it's very
Yeah.
chaotic.
Exactly. If you walk into a devastating situation, you expect loud, performative devastation. The mother represents that expectation. Earlier, she was screaming, cursing, physically attacking people.
But the cousin is completely dispassionate.
Completely.
Why is he so detached? I kept waiting for the breakdown or, the moment of realization where he screams at himself for causing this. But it never comes.
The breakdown never comes because his reality shifted the very second Siki's head hit the wall.
Wow.
He wasn't agonizing over whether to live or die. The decision was an instantly cemented fact. This is an incredibly astute psychological depiction of cold, resolved trauma.
That makes a lot of sense.
He didn't need to cry, because in his own mind, he was already a dead man. He was simply running errands for his own funeral.
Man, that is heavy. He was just tying up loose ends. So now the scene is a total nightmare.
A complete disaster.
The mother is left standing in this house with 2 dead bodies, 2 coffins, and a pile of gold. The local neighborhood hears about all of this blood and chaos, and they threaten to report the incident to the authorities.
Because a double suicide is a massive legal liability in this society.
Right.
The authorities getting involved means an official investigation. That could easily lead to the gold being confiscated or the mother being held legally responsible for the deaths occurring in her home.
She is terrified of losing her newfound wealth and her freedom.
Which brings us all the way back to the very first scene. The mother is desperate to avoid an investigation, so she sends a messenger to beg Fengji, the powerful COO of the aristocratic family, to intervene and smooth things over with the law.
Because Fengji is the ultimate authority here.
No, completely. She manages the estates, the vast sums of money, and the family's public relations.
When the messenger finally reaches Fengji's drawing room and relays this entire bloody, devastating story, the loyalty test, the double suicide, the coffins, her reaction is just staggering.
It really highlights the divide.
She is mildly surprised, but mostly she just marvels at it like it's a bizarre piece of local gossip. She mentions she's never seen such a foolish girl meet such a foolish boy.
And we should clarify that when she uses the word foolish here, she means intensely fierce and unyielding.
Oh, okay.
She actually takes a moment to reflect back on when Siki was first interrogated at the Grand House about the contraband. Fengji remembers that Siki acted completely unfazed during the questioning.
Right.
At the time, Fengji assumed it was just stubborn denial. Now, hearing about the violent suicide, she realizes it was genuine, hardened resolve all along.
She acknowledges how intense Siki was, but then comes the ultimate gut punch.
Yeah.
After hearing about a mother's monstrous greed, a deadly psychological test, and 2 teenagers dying in pools of their own blood, Fengji's final verdict is basically, I don't have time for this nonsense.
She explicitly states she does not have the time to manage their idle affairs.
She treats it like a clerical error. She adds, since it's pitiful, fine. And she casually agrees to tell her husband to have one of their servants, a guy named Wang, settle it with the local authorities. But she specifically notes that Siki was a fierce-natured child.
Xifeng's respect for Siki is a moment of profound psychological mirroring. Xifeng is a fiercely intelligent, strong-willed woman operating within a deeply patriarchal system.
She's always fighting for control.
She constantly has to fight for her own authority, manage the incompetence of the men around her, and assert her will. The word used for Siki's nature is lai, meaning fierce, intense, or unyielding.
Wow, unyielding.
When Xifeng hears about a maid who possessed such an unyielding spirit, she recognizes a reflection of her own internal fire. Even across the massive class divide, Xifeng respects a woman who refuses to bend.
The scene shifts abruptly. That transition from the bloody reality of the servants back to the masters is so jarring. We go straight from 2 dead bodies and a terrified mother, right into a room where the men of the Jia family are hanging out.
It's like flipping a channel.
And what are they doing? Jia Zheng, the strict Confucian patriarch, is casually playing a game of Go with a companion.
And not just playing casually, they are deep in the game, specifically fighting over a corner in what is known as a co-fight.
Explain the co-fight, because the metaphor here is too perfect to ignore.
In the game of Go, a co-fight is a specific recurring board situation where players take turns capturing and recapturing a single stone.
Okay, so a loop.
But the rules state you cannot immediately recapture the stone. You have to play a move somewhere else on the board first, a co-threat forcing your opponent to respond.
Got it.
If they ignore your threat to end the co, you gain an advantage elsewhere. It is an intense, localized battle where the life and death of a group of stones hang in the balance, and it requires immense strategic focus.
So you have these aristocratic men intensely focused on the artificial life and death of little black and white stones on a wooden board, completely oblivious to the actual literal life and death that just occurred in their own servants' quarters.
It is the peak of insulation.
And right in the middle of this game, they get a visitor, Feng Xing. He is a well-connected associate, and he isn't dropping by for tea. He is there to pitch them high-end, exotic, imported luxury goods.
He brings what is essentially a private, incredibly exclusive catalog right into their living room. He tells Xifeng that a contact from Guangxi has brought 4 foreign goods that are suitable to be used as imperial tributes.
Like gifts for the emperor.
Exactly. These are not everyday items. These are the zenith of luxury, craftsmanship, and exoticism.
I want you, the listener, to try and visualize these items because the level of opulence is staggering. First, he describes a 24-panel folding screen made of purple sandalwood.
Sounds nice already.
But the panels aren't painted silk or paper. They are made of a flawless, high-grade crystal or glass, what they call niter stone. And carved directly into this crystal are landscapes, pavilions, and 50 to 60 palace women depicting a famous historical scene called the Han Palace Spring Dawn.
It's incredible craftsmanship.
Feng Xing explicitly notes that the carving is so detailed you can see the folds of their clothes and the delicate features on their faces.
It is an item designed entirely to display wealth. A massive, heavy crystal screen meant for a grand hall, designed to catch the light and reflect the owner's status. He also mentions a mechanical clock, over 3 feet tall, featuring a mechanical boy who physically strikes the time, along with small figures inside that play a 10-part musical ensemble.
For Qing Dynasty China, European mechanical clocks were the ultimate technological novelty.
Oh, massive status symbol.
But the 2 items he actually brought with him in boxes are the ones that blow my mind. He pulls out a heavily wrapped brocade box. Inside, resting on red silk, is a pearl the size of a longan fruit.
Which is huge.
For reference, that's about the size of a large grape or small plum. It's massive. He calls it a mother pearl. They bring out a black lacquer tray, place the mother pearl on it, and then Feng Xing pours a handful of smaller, regular pearls onto the tray.
And what happens?
The text says the small pearls rolled round and round toward the big pearl, eventually piling up and lifting the mother pearl higher, sticking to it like magnets.
It is a remarkable, almost magical object. Whether it represents some exaggerated natural phenomenon, static electricity, or maybe a piece of lodestone disguised as a pearl, the symbolism is heavy.
It's so on the nose.
The mother pearl physically draws smaller pieces of wealth toward itself. It is a perfect, tangible metaphor for the gravitational pull of capital. Wealth attracts more wealth. The center of power draws resources from the periphery.
And the final item is the shark silk tent. It comes in a small rosewood box, folded so compactly it's less than 5 inches long and half an inch thick. You could put it in your pocket. But when they unfold it, layer by layer, it covers the entire table and would require a high-ceilinged room to fully deploy. It's woven from mythical shark silk, designed specifically for the summer heat. It's perfectly transparent, incredibly light, and completely repels mosquitoes and flies.
These items represent the absolute pinnacle of consumption. They are foreign, they are mechanically or naturally miraculous, and they are entirely unnecessary for daily survival.
Pure status.
They are status symbols, and Feng Xing explicitly mentions they are suitable for imperial tribute. This implies they are designed to be gifted upwards to the emperor or high-ranking officials to curry political favor, secure monopolies, or maintain standing.
Which means they aren't cheap.
No, the asking price reflects that specific high-stakes political utility.
Feng Xing casually drops the price tag. 20,000 taels of silver, 10,000 for the pearl alone, 5,000 for the tent, and 5,000 for the screen and clock.
That is a number we really need to put into context.
Yes, we need to anchor this number. You can't just say 20,000 taels without explaining the weight of that. Earlier in the text, a standard maid's monthly salary was mentioned as a fraction of a single tael.
Right.
A peasant family could live for a year on a handful of taels. 20,000 taels is a staggering, unfathomable fortune.
And this massive price tag is where the facade of the Jia family's wealth cracks wide open. Xifeng, upon hearing the price, immediately balks. He says, "Where would we get that kind of money?"
He knows they don't have it.
But because of face, he sends the items inside for grandmother Jia and the women of the inner chambers to look at, just in case they want them. Jia, who acts as the family's financial fixer, presents the items to Wang, Xifeng, and the other women, and Xifeng's response is a dose of pure economic realism.
This is where I start cheering for Xifeng. I look at Feng Xing like an extremely high-end, smooth-talking QVC salesman who has just knocked on the door of people who drive luxury cars but are secretly maxing out all their credit cards.
That's exactly what this is.
Jia kind of wants to buy the stuff. He likes playing the big shot. He likes the prestige of the items. But Xifeng looks at them and immediately shuts the whole thing down. She delivers this sharp, cold financial warning.
She looks at the items and says, the items are naturally good, but where is there this kind of idle money? She points out that they aren't provincial governors who need to buy tribute to bribe the imperial court.
And then she reveals what's actually on her mind.
Yes, she reveals what has actually been keeping her up at night. She says she has been thinking for years that a family like theirs must invest in unshakable foundations.
And she lists exactly what those foundations are: sacrificial lands, charity estates, and grave houses. She says that way, when descendants encounter unlucky events or disasters, they will still have a foundation and won't be completely wiped out.
We have to unpack the economics and the legal realities of the Qing dynasty aristocratic class to understand why she says this. The Jia family is incredibly asset-rich. They have a massive mansion, warehouses full of antiques, hundreds of servants, and immense social standing.
But they don't have cash.
They are severely lacking in liquid cash. They are burning through their reserves, sometimes literally pawning off family heirlooms just to maintain the daily appearance of their status.
They are living paycheck to paycheck, but the paycheck is just selling off the family silver.
Exactly. And Xifeng's specific strategy regarding grave houses or charity estates is brilliantly pragmatic. In this era, the emperor held absolute power. If a noble family fell out of political favor or was caught in a factional dispute, the emperor could order their estate raided and all their assets confiscated by the state.
And that happened a lot, right?
This happened frequently. It was the ultimate financial reset button for the crown.
But wait, how do grave houses protect against an imperial raid? If the emperor wants your stuff, doesn't he just take it?
There was a massive legal and cultural loophole. Properties designated for ritual purposes like the land surrounding ancestral tombs or agricultural estates set up specifically to fund clan charity and ancestral sacrifices were historically and legally protected from government confiscation.
Wait, really? The emperor couldn't touch them?
No. The bedrock of Qing law and social morality was filial piety and ancestral worship. Even the emperor, who derived his right to rule from the mandate of heaven and his own ancestral piety, was extremely hesitant to seize land dedicated to ancestral rites. It would be viewed as a deeply immoral, sacrilegious act.
Wow. So she isn't just talking about diversifying their investment portfolio. She is literally trying to build a legal, state-proof lifeboat. She sees the political iceberg coming, and she knows that a magic magnetic pearl or a giant crystal screen won't save them when the emperor's guards show up with a confiscation order.
She's planning for the worst-case scenario.
She wants hard assets that cannot be legally seized so her children won't starve in the streets when the titles are stripped.
It's a profound realization of their vulnerability. But look at how Jia responds to her plea for a lifeboat. He chides her. He gets annoyed.
He tells her to be quiet.
He says, the old lady hasn't even opened her mouth, and you're already speaking a bunch of depressing, unlucky words.
I have to ask, why is he so offended by basic math? Xifeng is the only one screaming about an emergency fund, and he acts like she just ruined the vibe at a party. Is this just wounded male pride, or is he actually that blind?
It is absolutely a matter of pride, but it's also a deeply ingrained systemic denial. Xifeng operates in the external, male-dominated world where appearance, face, and the projection of power are everything.
So admitting they're broke is social suicide.
Admitting they cannot afford these items, or worse, openly planning for a future where the family is utterly ruined, shatters the illusion he relies on to function in elite society. Xifeng, managing the internal books, sees the math. She knows the numbers do not add up.
But the men won't look at the books.
The men refuse to acknowledge the deficit, because doing so would mean admitting their own failure to maintain the dynasty they inherited.
But Grandmother Jia, the matriarch, actually agrees with Xifeng. She sides with the books over the boys, so Jia is forced to take the items back out to Feng Xing and reject the sale.
A very awkward moment for him.
And this moment of financial rejection, this admission that they are actually broke, leads us right into the final and, frankly, most terrifying section of the political shadows.
The men, Jia Zheng, his older brother Jia Shi, and the salesman Feng Xing sit down to drink warm wine and discuss politics. And the conversation quickly turns to a man named Jia Yukun.
Let's talk about Yukun because this guy is the ultimate political opportunist. The text outlines his entire rise to power, and it is staggering.
It's quite the resume.
They mention that he was originally a poor, down-and-out scholar living in a ruined temple in Suzhou. He was heavily subsidized by a kind, wealthy man named Zhen Xin.
A crucial stepping stone for him.
Eventually, Yukun used that money to travel to the capital, pass the civil service exams, became a magistrate, and even married a maid from the Zhen household.
But his rise doesn't stop there. After briefly losing his position due to arrogance and corruption, he maneuvers his way into becoming the private tutor to Lin Daiyu.
Dayu's cousin.
Exactly. And through that connection, he used his relationship with Dayu's father, Lin Ruhai, to get a letter of recommendation to the Jia family in the capital. He arrived at their door, managed to leverage their immense political influence, and got himself reinstated into the bureaucracy.
And once he had his foot back in the door, he just rocketed to the top. Jia Xing actually laughs and says he knows how to drill for positions.
It's Slimer.
He goes from a prefect to a censor, then a vice minister of personnel, acting minister of war. He got demoted 3 grades for some incident, but now Jilin hears a rumor that Yukun is about to be promoted again.
Jia Yukun's trajectory is the exact mirrored opposite of the Jia family's.
How so?
He starts with absolutely nothing. He uses everyone around him, from his initial benefactor Zhen Xin to his young student Daiyu to the Jia family's political capital, and ruthlessly climbs the ladder of state power. He represents the aggressive, meritocratic, and often deeply corrupt churn of the imperial bureaucracy. He survives because he adapts.
Meanwhile, the Jia family is coasting on inherited glory, slowly sliding downward. But the conversation over wine gets much, much darker. Jia Zheng brings up another family. The Zhen family.
A different Zhen, to be clear. Not the man who helped Yukun.
Right, not Zhen Xin, but the aristocratic Zhen family. And we have to explain the Zhen family because they are essentially the terrifying mirror image of the Jias.
The Zhen family is explicitly described by Jia Zhang as being identical to their own. They had the same level of historical merit, the same hereditary titles, the same massive estates in the south, and the same lavish, unchecked lifestyle.
They're basically twins.
The two families were close and constantly interacted. But then Jia Zhang notes, in just a few years, their family wealth in their hometown was confiscated, and to this day there is no news of them.
Think about the absolute terror of that statement. A family identical to yours with the same wealth and the same history was completely wiped out. Raided by the state, assets seized, and vanished into ruin.
Just gone.
And Jia Zhang says this out loud to his brother while drinking. He says, "Seeing this, don't you think those who are officials should be afraid?" He is looking directly at the flashing red warning light.
And the contrast between the two brothers' reactions here is the ideological crux of the family's impending doom. Jia Zhang is sweating bullets. He is deeply unsettled. He even has a moment of profound, painful self-awareness.
What does he say?
He admits, "We have no virtue and no talent. We are just vainly eating the taxes and relying on inherited privilege. How can we bear it?" For an aristocratic patriarch in this setting to bluntly admit his own uselessness and recognize the fragility of his position is incredibly rare.
He sees the rot. He knows they are standing on thin ice. But then you look at his older brother, Jia Shi literally brushes it off.
Full denial.
He says, "Our family is the most secure." And Feng Xing, playing the polite guest, agrees. He lists the reasons why they are supposedly invincible. First, you have an imperial concubine in the palace looking out for you. Second, you have many old friends and good relatives. Third, from the old lady down to the young masters, none of you are cruel or malicious.
It is the ultimate too-big-to-fail delusion. Their connections, their sister in the emperor's harem, and their sheer institutional momentum will protect them from the mechanisms of state power. It relies on old friends and the inertia of the past.
But I have to challenge Jia Shi's logic here. Doesn't the story of Jia Yukin, the guy they were literally just talking about, completely destroy Jia Shi's argument?
Oh, entirely.
I mean, you can use their old connections to get his power, and now he is a ruthless operator at the very top of the government. He has no loyalty to them. He only has loyalty to his own ambition. How can Jia Shi rely on old connections when the new connections are sharks like Yukin?
You have hit on the exact flaw in Jia Shi's worldview. The political landscape isn't static. The old friends are dying, retiring, or losing power. And the new operators, the men who actually run the bureaucracy now, like Yukon, are unsentimental pragmatists.
They don't care about history.
The emperor does not care about your family's historical merit if you become a political liability, or if the state treasury simply needs an influx of your confiscated wealth. The Zhen family had connections too. The Zhen family wasn't supposedly cruel either, and they were annihilated.
So Jia, she's just wrong.
Jia, she believes the rules of the past will protect him from the realities of the present. Jia Zheng knows they won't. But Jia Zheng is too paralyzed by tradition and a lack of true capability to actually do anything about it.
He just sits there and drinks. Let's not talk about these things. Let's just drink, Jia, she says. And the scene ends with this haunting cinematic image. The men finish their meal, Feng Xing's servant comes in and whispers to him, and Feng Xing announces he has to leave.
Because the weather has turned.
Exactly, because outside, silently, while they were drinking and ignoring their impending doom, a heavy snow has fallen.
The text notes that the snow is already over an inch deep. It is a cold, suffocating blanket descending on the massive, rotting estate.